What does a slave who doesn't want to go free and a lawyer that looks like a cat have in common? The message that my grandmother taught me. This week in Parashat Mishpatim, we learn that a slave is only allowed to work for his master for 6 years. After 6 years, the Torah says the slave automatically goes free. If, for whatever reason, the slave decides, I like it here, I enjoy being a slave, I want to continue working for this master, then a special procedure has to happen to allow the slave for staying longer. What happens? The master takes the slave and pierces a hole in his ear. Strange and a little bit barbaric. What's going on over here? So the Talmud tells us what is happening is a powerful reminder to the slave not to forget who he really is. The ear that the Jewish people used to hear on Mount Sinai, God tell the Jewish people, you are my servants. That our real master is God. So this slave who thinks he's a earthly slave and he's going to work for this master and he wants to stay longer, we remind him, don't forget who you really are. The ear that heard God say, I am your true master, don't forget who your real master is, don't forget who you really are. There was a viral clip that went around this week of a lawyer, Rod Ponton, who was a lawyer from Texas, and he was giving a Zoom court case, and his Zoom had a film filter of a cat. So here he is, trying to present himself in court, and everyone just sees a cat. And it was really funny. I advise everyone to watch it. But there was a powerful line that Rod Ponton said. As the judge is trying to explain to him that you look like a cat and there's a Zoom filter issue, Rod Ponton looks at the world and says, I am not a cat. And that's really funny, and then everyone starts to laugh. I'm not a cat, Your Honor, he says. He's looking at himself, and what does he see? He sees a cat. He needs to remind himself that he's not a cat. He's telling people, I'm really not a cat. Believe me, I'm not a cat, because sometimes in our lives, we forget who we really are. The slave needs to be reminded who he really is, that he's really a servant of God, not a servant of some earthly master. Rod Ponton had to remind the world, he may look like a cat, but he's really not a cat. Today marks 2 years since my grandmother passed away. And I always remember my grandmother telling me, and I'm sure everyone's grandmother told them this, but I always remember my grandmother pulling me aside and saying, you're such a special boy. And sometimes she would do it while putting some money in my hand. You're such a special boy. She never told me I was the favorite. Thank God Grandma had many different grandchildren. But she always would tell me, you're such a special boy. And that made such an impact on me. Knowing that I was actually a special boy. That there's something special about me. I wasn't just somebody. I was someone special. And that, Grandma, was a very, very, very powerful message. And that's the message that we tell the slave. Remember, you're not just a slave. You're someone special. You're a slave to God. And Rod Ponton was trying to shout to the world, I'm not a cat. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and don't forget who you really are.